I was asked to speak about the topic of search and LLMs, and I will jump into that. I also have a few slides here, John, you might be happy to know, on SEO. So I'll maybe cover that topic a little bit in advance. As John mentioned, kicking it off, he is a longtime friend of Pete Blackshaw, who was a student at one point at HBS when John was teaching at HBS. I met Pete 20 years ago. We've been great friends, but never in the same kind of line of work until recently. A year ago, we founded the company BrandRank. I come at the business through the lens of product management and SEO and interested in AEO. Most of my career, I've been at the intersection of search technology and information. So that's my interest. A TripAdvisor, certainly a company that was highly dependent on Google for success. Seeing that be disrupted is very interesting, to me from a curiosity and professional challenge. Here's the headline, right? The Google killer is out.
I am going to talk about agentic.
Could you mute, please, Rebecca? That would be helpful.
Sorry.
That's okay. I want to, first off, just kind of take that head on and say that, as Oscar Wilde said 100 years ago, reports of Google's death have been greatly exaggerated. So, the fact is that Google has had a monopoly for 15 plus years, 20 years, but it's not going anywhere tomorrow. This isn't a left turn and you wake up and Google's no longer relevant. Google, in fact, has Gemini, as you know, and will make generative AI part of the search experience, and will be one of the players on the board. But it's now a complicated board. So I think that the message I want you to take away from this is that we are going to see a diversified community of players for a period of time. Will we always need as many answer engines, general purpose answer engines, as we have? Probably not, but that consolidation is not in sight, at least not in my line of sight. And I think we're going to see some pretty exciting innovation due to the fact that there are so many competing businesses chasing, the same golden prize, which is dominance of this space. And Google, prior to the introduction of generative AI, was enjoying a $200 billion a year business on search revenues alone. What do we call these LLMs that are now search tools? And we at BrandRank call them answer engines. There are many names kind of tossed around from article to article. We think answer engines is an elegant way to describe them, as opposed to search engines, which predated them. And this isn't BrandRank's, sort of invented word. When Perplexity came to market, it called itself, from day one, an answer engine to point its differentiation against Google. So we think that is spot on. We think it represents what the technology does, which is provide answers. And to illustrate, from a little more abstract point of view, why that we think this is right. If you think of Google 1.0 as 10 blue links, a page where you are asked to uncover the value in terms of the content. If you take the analogy of a library, that is your card catalog, effectively. This is where you need to go to find the book that you're interested in. Now we're dealing with one response. It's blended, it's robust, it's authoritative. Right now it's ad-free. And think of this as the storyteller. If we had the card catalog, now we have the storyteller. And it's incumbent upon brands and businesses to ensure that their story is being told accurately. And that's not something to take for granted. The other thing we see here is that this isn't sort of a novelty. While content creation is certainly one way that people are using the tools, creating images, creating texts, writing their class paper, we have done surveys direct to panel surveys and determined through those surveys that researching products and services is number one, if not number one by our survey. Other surveys have shown that it's a very high interest area of the LLMs. People are not just using them casually, they're actually using them to get advice. This indicates other areas that we were seeing, that were reported in terms of our survey results: learning new skills, generating images, but products and services was a clear winner. Now, I come to the phrase, which is the title of the talk, which is "A Terrible Beauty is Born," a line from a poem from W.B. Yeats. And Yeats wrote this in the early 1900s in reference to the Irish uprising for a free state. Now, he was commenting on the fact that he was a supporter of the cause. He wanted to see a free Ireland. He was definitely a Irish nationalist, but he was sorry for the approach. He was sorry for the violence, sorry for the bloodshed. He thought that the tactics as a means to the end were tragic. And so I say that in the context of answer engines because while we are all very excited about this technology, we want to make sure that we don't take it on with sort of an irrational exuberance at all costs, right? And one question I'm sort of posing to you, but posing kind of in conversations that I have is, are we really looking at failure wearing the mask of progress when we talk about hallucination rates? And what I mean by that is, if you look at the graphic on your left, it looks like we're improving. The technology is getting better. The failure rates are getting smaller. The power needs of developing these LLMs is getting cheaper, if you believe the recent Chinese innovations. But is 1% acceptable? Is 1% an acceptable failure rate if you're using an LLM to generate a medical opinion about your health condition? We know that there are risks here, and we're not really clear on what is an acceptable level of risk as a community, as a society. The European Union passed an AI Act, which is attempting to assign penalties for unnecessary or for unacceptable risks, I should say. The US hasn't taken that approach, but there's somewhere in the middle, especially around these very sensitive areas, that is worth discussion. And Conrad, bless you. The other thing I'll say here is that one way these industries are mitigating this issue today is by having a human in the loop. And that's the graphic here that I'm showing at the bottom. Human in the loop effectively is making sure that when the doctor takes the transcription of your conversation, huge win, right? The doctor can face the patient and doesn't have to face the computer and write everything that you're saying. They can look at you, talk to you, and generative AI is capturing this through the phone, through some device, and has a transcript. Unfortunately, the person's first 5 minutes, they were telling you the health history of their uncle for whatever reason. And the doctor has to go into the notes and correct it to make sure that the right medical condition was attributed to his patient or her patient, not to the uncle. I'm going to have a sip of water. And that's not true for generative AI search. We talk about answer engines. There's no human in the loop. My point that I'm making here is that it's the tools in front of the user with no mitigation. And while I'm an optimist, a technology optimist, I'm also deeply concerned about hallucination rates and the fact that they're not widely understood. And I see a potential problem occurring that might cause the unwanted consequences of an AI winter. If there's a media frenzy, a media storm around something that happens because someone took the advice, and we know that this has happened in isolated cases, but but it hasn't been enough, right, to kind of to slow progress. And as a technologist, you don't want over-regulation, but the lack of regulation may have the pendulum swing harshly to the other side if something like that were to happen. Where I want to bring it back now to a little more specific to the company I'm working in, BrandRank. BrandRank has been around for a year, and we're looking at the problem through the lens of the brand manager, the brand leader, the CMO. And our role, our position in the marketplace is to help that brand leader understand the narrative in the answer engines about their brand and about the competition, and to help them regain control of that narrative. Today, what we're seeing, what we're sensing, the individuals in those seats, they're feeling like they're being pulled into this vortex. This black hole might also represent the way that these large answer engines, LLMs, have consumed the entirety of the internet as a basis of their knowledge without clear understanding of the right to do so, or is the narrative correct, or how did you get the information, or how do I change the information? And what adds kind of insult to injury from a brand manager's perspective is a comment that the CEO of Microsoft AI shared recently, which was basically, hey, if it's on the web, it's ours. There's a social contract that the content is fair use. Now, this is the kind of comment that either has you, throwing your fist through the computer, or laughing outrageously, because it just is so preposterous to think that there's any foundation to this, when any high schooler knows the basic tenets of copyright. But in any event, this is a real threat to brands. They're trying to, the LLMs, of course, want to claim that they have the authority to do this, and so this is a very gray area that hasn't been sorted out. All this is to say, it leaves the brand leaders feeling like they're in a car out of control. There's an inconsistent brand voice across the answer engines. You'd think that if you asked ChatGPT something, you could see a comparable kind of response in Meta or Perplexity or Grok. The reality is you don't. They treat they have a different way of presenting the content. They have different answers. They express different opinions. If you ask it a simple question like, what's the best, name the top 5 restaurants in Boston, and you try this on the different answer engines, you're going to get different answers. They won't all give you the same one answer. It's not Nobu for all of them. And so there is something here that is troubling, deeply troubling to businesses. Another one is the low answer engine visibility. Am I even being seen? How do I know if I'm being seen? There are no metrics around this. There's decline in Google search. One of the predictions that, many have made a prediction, but a prediction that was made by Gartner last summer was that 50% of businesses' SEO traffic would vanish in 4 years. Businesses are starting to see that. Some have seen that already. The other is, does the when there is an answer, where does the answer come from? So there is a lack of source transparency, and that's what that statement means. What is attributable to the source of the content? And then last is product misrepresentation. Does the answer engine provide a list of ingredients that represent reality or not? But you can get those types of lists from answer engines. So we call this at BrandRank the great answer divide. And it's a simple graphic, but it's a profound impact in terms of brand strategy. And the challenge here is that the large language models, the answer engines, are far more competent and ready to answer questions for consumers than the brand sites themselves. We have found time and again instances, for instance, where the brand website can't answer basic questions about how to use its product but the answer engines can. And that's terrifying, to a brand leader. Or if you ask a brand that is betting its future on sustainability and trying to win, a Gen Z, a community of buyers, and speaking to, obviously the right message and the right mission of doing of following best practices as it relates to the environment and supply chain, you can't find that content on the brand website if you try to interrogate it, but the answer engines know. So these are areas that are impacting the brand's visibility, and it also creates a disconnect between what the brand is promising and what the answer engine is providing in terms of a response. We solved the problem, though. The good news is BrandRank found the equation that brought the universe to equilibrium. So I'm joking, of course, but trust is at the center of how we think about content as it relates to search. Trust has never been more important. If algorithms are going to be the arbiter of truth, then consumers need a reason to believe that what they're presenting is accurate. RV squared in our terminology represents 3 dimensions: readiness, the readiness of your brand's website and your brand content to be properly ingested or harvested by the answer engine algorithms and their crawlers, which visit websites. The vulnerability of the brand as it relates to the alignment between its promise and what the answer engine is saying about it. And then the visibility of the brand. Is it being served as a candidate answer? And in that example I gave before, best restaurants, if you're in the list, great. If you're not, why aren't you? And how do you get into that list if you truly have a reason to be there? I won't go into like product demos or anything like that, but I wanted to share with you again how we're doing what we're doing. We are measuring these attributes. We are looking at visibility by prompting answer engines. We've built a platform that can take a series of prompts and create a baseline for a brand in terms of its visibility and measure it against its competitors around any topic. We're measuring the vulnerability. We're scoring the content readiness. We've developed some identification of what trust signals look like, and we then provide this into a score for the businesses. Obviously, the question everyone asks us is, well, how do I influence my presence? What is it that I need to do? We talk about this in a few ways. First, we name it answer engine optimization. So there was search engine optimization, right? And we think, again, answer engine will win out as a terminology because it's just so compatible to what we had in the past 20 years. And so AEO is how we describe it. And there are techniques and practices, both from a content perspective and also from a technical perspective in terms of how they can structure their website and their content. The gibberish on the left isn't meant to say that it's completely different. Actually, it is a different language, though. What I wanted to communicate is that it's not just SEO. That alone isn't going to get you where you need to be as a brand. But it's in fact that answer engine optimization is an evolution of good SEO. Good AEO practices don't negate what you've learned are helpful to SEO. Providing your expertise, your authority, your trustworthiness as a brand is as important as ever. But I wanted to give you a little bit more substance around that. And so that's what this slide provides. What are some of the key attributes or the aspects between SEO and AEO? How are they different? If you think about the outcome of both of these, you'll get there pretty quickly on your own. Good SEO is about being part of page 1 SERP, right? Being in that top rank on Google. So Google told us to optimize titles and meta tags and to use rich snippets and to do, keyword tagging into our web pages and to find good backlinks and to do other things that influence page rank. These are, as I started off by saying, these are still important. You cannot afford to turn a blind eye to SEO. You need to continue to do those things. But AEO is the child to the parent of SEO. There's more you need to do. The answer engine's appetite for content about your brand is an order of magnitude greater now. You need to answer questions before they're asked. We think of this actually as we're moving into an era, I think it's my next slide, that is going to look like answer media, meaning it is in this question and answer format that consumers will be interacting and discovering you. In terms of content structure, answer engine crawlers visit your site and harvest the content. And there are techniques you can deploy as a website to improve the possibility of being successful, for that event. Keeping your content in PDFs or keeping good content in imagery, today at least, is not best practice. Like SEO, the rules of the game of AEO are going to evolve. But remember that these LLMs were created by academics initially. And so the content that speaks to your expertise, your authority, a reason to believe that it is high quality, that has statistics as part of its makeup, its DNA. These are attributes that are helpful in the context of answer engine responses. The other thing we've discovered is that publisher websites have a disproportionate impact on the answer engines themselves versus traditional SEO. And this is not hard to imagine why either. The answer engines are looking for, it would seem, some basis of authority to base their answer on. The brand speaking about itself, the company speaking about itself, is a safer bet to use as a point of reference. But we see this as we've studied the attribution of answers to various websites, and it's become quite obvious. One more drink. This slide shows you an experience that a user will have. It's one experience a user may have using ChatGPT's search function. Search operates differently than the standard ChatGPT in a couple specific ways. One, it provides these images that you don't get unless you've prompted, to ask specifically for them. Search is also going out on the web in real time and harvesting content to provide the answer. At the end of this answer, I received a video from YouTube, a link to a video from YouTube. And no pun intended, but it all begs the question here, why these images? Out of the universe of images that it could have given me for how to feed a dog, why these four? And why the one video that I got at the bottom? And in the body of the content, when it's telling me how to feed my dog, where did it learn that? And is it even right? So these are all very, very critical questions, and questions that brands are deeply interested in answering. I'll go a step further, just a few more slides for me. One is to tell you our belief that answer engines make trust signals incredibly necessary for buyers, not less. And as I said earlier, that if answer engines are now your arbiter of truth or the gatekeepers of truth, then the real disruption isn't just search, it's trust. Love that quote by Ruman Chowdhury. And I feel that this is the time for, in some ways, the reintroduction of some of the credentialing that we saw in the early days of the internet. How do you trust the e-commerce site that you're about to buy from? There was a industry around that. The Better Business Bureau has been in our, ecosystem, our vernacular for over 100 years, but it's pretty much fallen by the wayside as it relates to for the last 2 generations. I know if I asked my son or my daughter about the BBB, they'd say, what? What is that? They're much more familiar with Yelp, Trustpilot, and other sites like that. But if I'm trying to find the best lawn mowing service and I see that it's got an independent verification from the BBB of an A+, that's going to help me believe its credibility. So I think we're entering an era, and as it relates to search in particular, where this kind of credentialing is going to be more and more evident, prevalent, and necessary. To that extent, I asked it, I wanted to investigate, can I trust GAI insights? And the answer I got back was probably. There aren't any kind of like certifications or credentialing that the answer engines could reference as it relates to GAI insights. And I was cautioned by Gemini that it's always healthy to have a dose of critical evaluation when considering a business like GAI insights. But I just thought it was interesting that this was a very matter of fact, delivered to me in 2 seconds kind of response with a very strong opinion. And it was different, slightly different across the other answer engines. I just chose to bring this one. And I also created this image that I liked when I was kind of thinking about GAI insights and wanted one for this deck. So happy to give that to you if you think you can use it again somewhere.
Love it.
In terms of what AI search will become, I wanted to just end with a little bit of futurism. Because at least from my seat, I'm seeing the whole model of people typing things out into a web browser and to a search bar as might become as laughable as dial-up internet. Which some people maybe on this call don't even know what I'm talking about, but that whole idea of dial-up internet, it might be akin to this. Like if you were searching for something in a search bar, and not using your voice or using your fingers or just using your glasses, it may seem totally archaic. I think also search is going to become multimodal, and Alexa Plus was mentioned earlier. I couldn't agree more, and I've been waiting for that for a while. Alexa was supposed to bring that out in October ahead of the shopping season. I'm glad it's finally here. But I also think these tools in search itself will be more relationship driven, which might make it harder once that relationship's established for a brand to change a buying behavior. But think about it, if I'm getting informed from answer engines about my purchases and I like what I'm getting, I'm less likely to change that. Final slide, I wanted to I say what I feel, which is like, this is only the warm up. We're all very excited about generative AI. We think, it's changing our world, and it is. And it's, as John mentioned in a TED talk, this is the first time computers are talking back to us, which is exciting. But I don't think we've seen the most disruptive invention of our generation. And I think that has profound implications on search and this whole talk and like what search may become. And so I want to just leave it there, but I think there are, this idea of the rise of the agent and the agent doing negotiations on your behalf, and the idea that you're going to be consuming content that's ultimately created on the fly for you. Today, you and I visit the same web page. It doesn't matter our demographic. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. I see the same web page for a brand that you see. And I think that will be viewed as a kind of a ridiculous proposition here in the not too distant future. So I'll end it there. And I guess I have a few minutes left for questions.
Well, thank you for that. Lucinda, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I have so many questions. But all right. So I think that when Pete was here previously, he also talked about some of the tactics. And so given that there's going to be more relationship oriented, as you said in like one or two slides back, like what are the tactics that you're finding that actually work?
Yeah, are you asking the tactics of helping a brand improve its generative AI kind of narrative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
narrative, well, the way that it shows up, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, it's
the
so
narrative is
it's
just the path, the way there, right? I
yeah,
want the
its
results to
visibility,
be.
its vulnerabilities. Yeah, I mean, so it's different per there isn't one answer. What we do as a business is we audit a brand and we understand kind of where its opportunities are, and we then proceed, you know, through our path of recommendations. But it is there is definitely a content component that's a large piece to this, and I mentioned some of it. You know, Pete might have mentioned FAQs and, you know, providing more detail where you're trying to anticipate the questions before they're asked, because you want the answer engines to be as informed as possible. But I don't have here are the three magic, you know, kind of silver bullets for a quick answer. That's also what we kind of pay our clients pay us to give them. So
It's great. As always, please give my regards to Pete, and our fearless leader should be back next week. So thanks, everybody. And,
okay, thank you, John. Safe travels.
tomorrow
Thank you.
morning. Bye-bye
Bye.
now.